And next up, we have a company that was built by the expertise of entrepreneurs in capital markets, corporate finance, and beyond. Join me in welcoming Hadley Ford, CEO of iAnthus.
All right. Thank you all for coming in. My name is Hadley Ford. I'm the CEO and co-founder of iAnthus Capital. I actually got a phone call end of last week from the powers that be here at Benzinga. They said, Hadley, we'd like you to be the keynote speaker. We'd like you to talk about the future. Now, the reason they called me was because the previous keynote speaker had canceled. But I, of course, already knew that, and that's why they called me. I have a keen way of seeing the future. And as a latter-day Nostradamus, you need to indulge me as I warm up to get ready for some of my predictions. Just like you have to stretch before you go to the gym, or at least this is what people tell me, I don't actually go to the gym. I need to warm up my mind to think a little bit about what the future is going to hold. So I have 4 envelopes here that have been prepared by the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham and Howe. We actually use them in our New York application. They're quite good. But they've approached 4 random members of the audience early today, and they prepared 4 questions to which I'm going to divine the answer without actually opening the envelope. So, and then they have been in the hands of Mr. Cheatham the entire time. This is the first time I've seen these envelopes. So please bear with me. So the first envelope, the answer is Boehner, Maroney, and Webb. That's the answer. Let's see what the question is. Name 3 unemployed politicians who finally got off the dole with jobs in the green market. There we go. Canada's helping to employ those who couldn't find work in another industry. Let's see what the second one is. Waits to turn green. That's the answer to the question contained on this card. Waits to turn green. Let's see what the question was that one of you had. It says, what does Donald Trump do at a stop sign? Well, that's not bad. I think so long as he stays there, it's another case of putting someone to good work. The third one, 420. That's a great number for our industry. 420 is the answer to the question that one of you asked and gave to Mr. Cheatham. And the question is the number of cannabis companies that are trying to go public this quarter. And it does seem as if anyone who's ever smoked a joint is trying to go up north and get public. And then here's the last envelope. ITHUF. That's what I'm sensing, but I don't really know what the question could be for ITHUF. Well, it's actually a shameless way to plug the ticker for my OTC company, ITHUF. You can buy it, point, click. I have the microphone, I get to do that. So, and yeah, I'll be here for Tuesday, try the roast beef, and don't forget to tip the waitstaff. So let's take a look at the future. 2019. There's 3 keys to success if you're an MSO in the United States. You have to have a big footprint. And I'll come to why that matters. And you have to have money to build out that footprint, and you have to be able to have an operational plan that can replicate state by state by state. So those are some of the trends, some of the things you might see in 2019 is those 3 things are key to success. So on the footprint size, which I think also involves retail and brand, size matters. Those of you who've seen me speak before hear me talk about $1 trillion of market cap opportunity in 10 years. Today there's about 50 or 60 billion dollars of revenue in the United States from a cannabis perspective. That's black and legal. And that's about an 11% penetration rate of regular usage. The similar type fact within alcohol is about 55% regular usage. So if cannabis looks a lot like the adult beverage business 10 years from now, it should be a 200 billion or more market. If you have the ability to sell brand and distribution, that 200 billion of revenue, is going to trade at 5 to 6 times revenue. That's $1 trillion of market cap. So there's $1 trillion up for grabs here. And if it looks like any other industry, 80% of that $1 trillion will be garnered by the national leaders. So you want to have a national footprint so you can play in that $800 billion pool as opposed to the $200 billion one. Having that retail presence is very important because remember in cannabis, you're not going to buy ad time at the Super Bowl, and we typically get kicked off of Facebook at least 5 times a week. So you have to have that retail presence to build brand. People talk about a national brand, they better have a national retail footprint because there's no distribution that's in place, there's no groups of stores you can go get deals with, and you actually have to make the product in every single state. So having that footprint is very, very key. The implication from that is the footprint is a game of musical chairs, and that game is, there's not a lot of chairs left, let's put it that way. All the seats at the table in several large limited license markets are taken. It's impossible to create a national footprint without having something in New York or Florida, New Jersey. Those are limited license markets. So the implication on that is you're going to see the leaders within this industry continue to acquire, to both grow horizontally and also fill out on an in-state basis. So M&A will be very important throughout the year. From a retail perspective, no one wants to bring back Soviet-era commissaries, right? You don't want to have dispensaries that look like Soviet DMV. Consumers want to be delighted in beautiful stores with great products, assisted by educated and helpful staff. So look in 2019 for MSOs to emphasize a better retail experience. And the implication is you better have stores that look like our West Palm flagship store at 4237 Okeechobee. There's the call out right there. There's their short drive up 95. You can't miss it. Third door on the left off of exit 71. There we go. Yeah, I did my notes. And when the consumers are in your beautiful high-volume West Palm store at 4237 Okeechobee, just north of here, they're going to buy product and you're going to drive awareness around that. So look for retail emphasis, look for people who are serious about brand to lead with that retail piece. Also, another component of brand is the CPG and beverage companies who've been so active in Canada. They've been active in Canada not because they think that is a great consumer market, although you do have 36 million people, but they're up there so that they can learn and then come to the United States. So the supposition is in 2019, you will see a consumer packaged good company, an adult beverage company, do or announce something in the United States. The question is how and why they're going to do that. They're going to do that through CBD. That's what I like to call CBD is the gateway drug to THC. It's these alcoholic beverage companies, any of the big pharma, big tobacco, they're going to enter through that. That's a great way for them to come in. The implication for the MSOs, of course, you better have a CBD strategy. So look for all of us to develop some type of cogent CBD strategy in 2019. Now on the money side of things, this is an exceptionally capital-intensive business. We all know that. Access to capital is a huge advantage for the leaders of the industry, and the cost of capital is our #1 cost factor. So driving that cost down is extremely important. So this has a couple of implications as we look into 2019. First, the death of the Canadian RTO. Maybe not the death, but it's going to have a very bad cold. We think that you can't have 5 RTOs go out and raise $1 billion this past fall. Unfortunately, some of them are still trading below offer price. Investors saw that, and they're going to be a little bit more wary when the next person comes up from New York and says, hey, here's my company. This will give an implicit advantage to those of us who are already public. We'll have a lower cost of capital, we can raise money more cost effectively, and we can lean against the competition that doesn't have access to that type of cost. It also implies that the U.S. institutional investor will be more important this year, which has a lot of implications for the MSOs that are already public. Things like, I guess one prediction for 2019, you will likely see a U.S. investment bank put their name on some prospecti. I'm not really sure that's the plural of prospectus, but I like to say it, prospecti. And that U.S. bank, it will look like deal. There'll be a marketing period, there'll be registered shares effective under the SEC, they'll be placed in institutional hands, and be free trading. That's my prediction that that'll happen in 2019. Whoever is able to do that will have an even lower cost of capital advantage versus their peers. But that has some implications as an MSO on how you should comport yourself, because the U.S. institutional investor differentiates not just between your business, but with what you are as a stock. And this is an important distinction, and we're just starting to see this happen in the cannabis market. That means things like sponsorship. Who actually sits on your board, wrote a big check, and did some diligence? Very important to the U.S. institutional investor. They invest in tech, they like to see SoftBank on the board, maybe Kleiner. Same thing's going to happen in cannabis. Governance. Do you have an independent board? Do you have independent committees? How do decisions get made? Who's accountable to the shareholders? Share overhang. Do you have what I call syndicate risk? Do you have a lot of people who made early risky investments, but at some point want to come out into the public market? How does that jive against the public investor who's on the margin at the current price? That's going to be very important. Liquidity, not just absolute share trading, but your percentage of market cap. Many of these funds actually can only hold 25, 30 days of trading volume. They don't want to leg into a tenth of percentage of your company. They want to leg into 4.9%. They're going to look at that liquidity component. And you'll notice that when I go through all these things, I haven't said cannabis once. That's the differentiation between the stock and the company aspect of it. And then the last trend that I'm going to see in 2019 is really that operational piece. You need to have operations that can replicate. You're not making the Cheerios in Oklahoma and shipping them around. You have to make it in every single state. The chocolate in Massachusetts better taste the same as the chocolate in Florida, or you're not building a national brand. That means you're going to see trends on the discussion of such scintillating topics as ERPs and accounting systems. And I know I pop open a bottle of bubbly when I sit down with my team to have those discussions. Technology will be adopted to drive down costs, improve yields, study analytics. You'll have compounds and formulations become more sophisticated as extraction technology starts to yield some of the results we all know that it can.
What does ERP stand for?
What does what stand for?
ERP.
It's a type of software that allows you to measure all of your inputs across your network. Enterprise something. That's good. If you have a resume, you can shoot it in.
Looking for resumes.
Yeah, I'm always looking for resumes. But that's the conclusion. She's stealing my thunder. She always does. That's the conclusion. So all that stuff I just said, that sounds like, it's not talking about cannabis, which is fun and exciting and all that. But that's the hard work that needs to be done. What does hard work take? People. So 5 years ago, I could barely convince myself to join this company. It was my company. We're seeing now. What a boss am I? I'm a cheap boss. I don't pay myself enough. But we're going to see in 2019 more professionals decide they're ready to come into the industry. And we're going to see a lot of competition for top talent, and identifying that talent and acquiring that talent and delighting that talent and organizing that talent is going to be a key theme in 2019. So, those are three things. You're going to see continued M&A among the leaders as they consolidate their leadership position. You're going to see the U.S. capital markets. I think there'll be a first, what I call it, regular way U.S. style offering. And the third piece, the competition for top talent will intensify in 2019. So this is a huge market, much, much, much bigger than any analyst is giving it credit for, as I said earlier. And there's only a handful of big national operators with the type of footprint that look to compete for that $800 billion of potential market cap. That's the 80% of the trillion. Now, if you go out 10 years and you take that $800 billion and you discount it back today and you can pick whatever wild rates you want, this sector, anyone you've seen talk today, is 4 to 5 times undervalued today. Now, you might sit there and go, oh, I can't believe that iAnthus and Curaleaf and GTI are 4 or 5 times undervalued. These valuations are wacky. 3 years ago in Canada, there were 7 public cannabis companies. Collectively, they had less than $1 billion of market cap. You added them all up, less than $1 billion. Here we are 3 years later, you take the top 10, it's north of 60 or 70 billion dollars, and many of those companies have returned 20 to 30 times returns for their shareholders. And the United States is 10 times bigger than Canada. So this is going to happen. My prediction for 2019, it's our turn now for that type of wealth creation. Thank you very much. I've got 7 seconds for questions.